those of you not familiar, Richard Mabion is a member of the NAACP. I'll let him go ahead and get it, but he's affiliated with the NAACP, also does a lot of environmental work, and I didn't have as much time to prep as I would have liked, so I'm going to be asking you lots of questions to find out more about what it is that you're doing and how we can work together in order to produce a better situation for all of us. So with no further ado,
first of all, it's nice to meet you, especially since we have the same first name.
Yeah, you know, I happen to think that you had I thought you did your affairs did real great with that one.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and tell us a little bit about, I know that one of the things that we wanted to highlight is the intersection between the role that the environmentalism plays with communities of color and some of that and some of the other things. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is.
Let's get started on that. Actually, my first exposure was in the environmental world. I got into that after 9/11 because when trying to regroup, I lost my business like a lot of folks did after 9/11. Small businesses got tore up. And when I looked around for a way to me to create an income, that's when I discovered this environmental world. And I ended up working in it and finding out that there was a need for someone like myself who had some of the right kind of background to learn this industry and be able to come back and start teaching people in our low-income communities where there is no one that's actually teaching it. Since that time, the industry has exploded, and luckily I was involved in the training aspect of it with the likes of Van Jones and all of these people around the country that have become icons from being there. So I learned a lot real quick, and then when I got into it, I realized a good way for me to get into the Black community, because the Black leadership is really not into the environmental movement, was to become a NAACP member. So that combined me with the Sierra Club, which is the oldest white organization, almost or literally white organization, basically. And then the NAACP, which is, Black organization. So I'm kind of in between those two, bringing the message from both places to each other. So that's what puts me where I am right now. Okay. Okay, I'm not hearing you.
Apologies about that, guy. You mentioned the Sierra Club being primarily white. What was that like? I mean, it was I presume around in the early 2000s. So what was that like then, and how has that changed since you've been working in like trying to bridge those two communities?
Going into the Sierra Club was similar to my experience of integrating America back in the civil rights days. I mean, you're kind of on an island by yourself, and you really have to literally define yourself and develop relationships with folks. But one thing I like about the Sierra Club, they don't just take you in because you walked in the door. They really need you to see you performing and being what you say you are. So I had to earn the right to earn the respect that I have received from them. I feel I've come a long ways. I mean, I'm all the way to being courted by the National Sierra Club to be involved in some work on that level, which I think is fantastic. I think the organization itself is a work in progress. We have a Black president of the board now, which is unbelievable. We have several key Black folks that are working along in various positions, which is great. But we're at that place right now where still the need for conversations of how we become let's say a multicultural unit is. That's where we are right now. There's a very good progressive group that's at the leadership position from DC down to out to San Francisco, now just moved to Oakland, that are very, very serious about creating a diverse organization. And you know how that means. That means that within the rank and files, you're going to have various individuals along the way that's still in the process of understanding where we're going. Okay. I was the first Black board members in the state of Kansas. I am still, and that was in 2012, and I am still the only Black board member in the state of Kansas. Not because the organization wouldn't have it, but finding black Americans who would be willing to participate in the Sierra Club is where our work is.
Well, my question would be is you mentioned that one of the reasons that you're having a problem with having more black leadership within your local chapter is getting other black folks involved. What have been some of the obstacles, hurdles, objections that you've been hearing from the communities that you're reaching out to try and get involved?
Well, I'm like a lone wolf. So it's not that there's a lot of objections to it. There's just not a lot of us out here trying to do it. So you're like I said, you're on an island on your own, and you're trying to reach people. Our ministers are pretty much missing in action. You have some that are probably the same way you are with the progressive group. You have some that participate, and you have some that are aware of it. But when it comes to that support that you really would want to have from that ministers group, you know, that's our stalwart folks. You know, every Sunday they're supposed to be saying something about the Progressive Army, and they're supposed to be saying something about this environmental work that I'm out here doing. That's not happening. So that's I would say my biggest hurdle is being able to get the support within the black community of what the environmental movement is really about. You know, I mean, quiet is kept, brother. You know, the kind of foods we eat is killing us. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we should be, I look, and I mean, we should be addressing that issue, but we're not. I mean, our young kids are biggest houses at 10 years old. No one's saying anything about what food has to do with your health. Okay, and that's an environmental issue, and I'm saying we should be doing it. That's not just coming from your ministers. I mention them because I'm a boots on the ground person. That's who I work with. But our medical field is not really, as far as I'm concerned, participating in that subject in such a way that people would take a look and realize what they're saying.
No, that's a really great point you bring up about the medical field and how food is treated within the medical field. I know in many other countries, one of the very first things they ask you if you go to the doctor in order because you're sick or something, one of the very first things they ask you is, what have you been eating?
That's right. That's right.
And that expectation of you being honest about what you're eating is critical in the whole process, and that question doesn't even get asked in most doctors' offices, or people are too worried about offending people. To really address those types of issues has had devastating effects on the community. Particularly, you see this especially with diabetes in the South.
Well, if you would stop and look around, and this is what I would recommend, look at your Sierra Club people. You know, I said that they've always been proclaimed to be this lily white group, and they have been, but look at them. And you will find the majority of them are slimmed down, they're eating right, they're exercising right. They're doing all the right things to take care of their bodies. You know, so I'm saying they have discovered something that we're not dealing with. Food, they call it GMO, genetically modified organisms or whatever. The way they're making out that we have these companies that are making seeds in the laboratory. Okay, that's what they're growing our food from. Okay, well, common sense would tell you that's not really what we should be giving our children. That's not really what we should be eating. But yet and still, no one's saying anything to us about eating food that's in canned goods inside stores. Now, I'm not trying to tear, I don't want to be Oprah Winfrey and tear up the food industry and people come into my house to take me to court. I'm just saying that's something that we should be discussing.
Yeah, it's like nobody I don't think wants an Oprah moment where the meat industry comes down and you got to hire a Dr. Phil in order to cover you. But I think that there's some really important points, and over at Project Sanity in general, there's mixed feelings on GMOs, but I think that you bring up an excellent point that it needs to be discussed. If it is safe, then we need to know how and why it's safe, and people need to be able to understand that. And not just the scientists, but everyday folks that are going and purchasing these items need to have at least a basic understanding of why one thing is safer than another or one thing isn't safer. And that we're not getting. And on top of that, touching a bit on the Oprah thing, is that we've realized now at this point that the food pyramid and lots of the food information that we've been getting throughout recent history has actually been more or less propaganda, in that that milk or cow milk isn't necessarily that healthy for us. It's not necessarily a great source of calcium, and we're just finding out that breakfast cereals are anywhere between 25 and 50% sugar.
Correct.
And so many of these other things that we were assumed, it's part of a balanced breakfast, or we get propaganda as into believing that it's good for us to eat, and it's not. Go ahead.
Well, they just had a very negative report recently on bacon. Here I go again. But they had a very negative report about it. Now, I'm not saying people should stop eating bacon, but they should understand what they are saying bacon contains and what it does to you. We have diabetes in our race that's unbelievable. I think probably every other person you see is a diabetic. And the first thing they tell them to stop doing is eating bacon. And when they tell you about bacon, they say, look at bacon. What is it? Bacon is mostly just fat. And so basically, I'm not saying people can do whatever they want to do is your right in life. But I do think we need to know it, especially those of us that are raised in a future generation. They have a program right now, even with food stamps, that are allowing people to go to farmers markets, and they call it SNAP. I don't know if it's just here in Kansas or what, but it doubles up the amount of your food stamp. Every $10 worth $20 if you're buying vegetables. Okay, that's fresh vegetables. That should be known.
Yeah, and I know we have a SNAP program here. I'm not familiar whether if that's a feature of it or not. So,
yes.
But yeah.
Yes, that's what it's about. It's about them doubling up the price of the food stamps, because that's encouraging people to eat fresh food. That's the problem. We got we call them urban deserts, no grocery stores and stuff. Yeah. And we're spending all our time trying to figure out how we can talk our cities into putting a grocery store in the neighborhood, and they're coming in, they're going to sell preservative food inside cans, where we really could be figuring out how we can get some gardens going and selling some food, as providing our elderly, especially, and our kids with some fresh vegetables. That's just one side of it. That's very, as far as I'm concerned, small portion of the environmental concern, but it's a place you can start, because it's a place that everyone can understand. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to be able to understand if you grow your own food in your backyard and eat it, you can remain a lot healthier than you're buying it at the dollar store, because we don't have grocery stores in our community.
Mm-hmm. Or gas stations or anything like that.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, and you would think that it might be even possible to get some support from what's traditionally on the right. I don't know why my camera seems to be acting up. Let me try. There we go. Maybe hopefully that'll work.
I don't know. You changed ethnic groups on me, but how?
It's that high contrast, man. Those light-skinned brothers and the black and white, man. Sometimes it gets a little.
I got you. Okay.
I see myself in the thing.
Yeah,
there we go. Okay.
Yeah, with that psychedelic.
Oh, yeah. I was like, let's see if I can remember where the point was. Let's see here. We're food deserts. And it's like, so, well, one is about, like, yeah, like you mentioned, once we figure out that we need the food, or we have the access to the food with something like a SNAP benefit, it's important to actually have the grocery store there to be able to purchase it. And I know lots of folks, like in lots of areas, it's not as easy to find those fresh fruits and stuff, and so that you end up out of convenience, and not to mention transportation issues and just other issues about getting food.
All of that stuff goes hand. You know, there's a you remember back in the 60s when they had the old co-op food stores?
I don't remember, but I've heard.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you, around the country, a lot of those are popping back up. But now you got a different caliber of person that is working there. They got some here in Kansas. I don't have it in my city, in Kansas City, Kansas. But they have one in Lawrence. Lawrence have two of them, I think, in Lawrence. That's a college town where KU is. And we have one up in K-State. Both stores they have all the latest quality stuff in there. I mean, it's not like the old places where you had the boxes and you go in there and you do this and do that. They're fixing them different, and I'm telling you, they're eliminating that middleman cost. They're bringing the cost down on it. In fact, some of them gotten so big now that they can't even. It's like a regular supermarket. But those kinds of models are starting to form, and you start seeing it more and more as we continue to go along these lines. You know, I have organizations here and around Kansas City that have grass-fed beef. They're bringing it in town. They're getting it processed, bringing it in town on weekends. People are finding them because it's a much better brand of beef to eat. They got the a grass-fed egg chicken, so they're getting eggs that don't have all that chemicals and stuff in them. So it's starting to happen, and it's going to continue to spread. And so when you talk about needing to have the grocery store, yeah, fine, let's have them, but let's start making sure we're stocking them and we got jobs for people that can be able. If I'm raising some chickens, I want to have a place I can sell them, okay? So people will start knowing it, and believe me, they're looking, they're hunting it up, they're going after it. I participated in one of those, they call it community service groups and CSAs. And these people lived outside of Kansas City, and we would order our food, pay them so much a year, $150 or something like that. And every weekend they were bringing food in to a location in town, and you go down and pick it up, and it would be like eggs and chicken and all that kind of stuff. So it's starting to happen. It's the beginning of a process, but we need to, but it's helping to educate the population that this is a much better way to eat.
Yeah, and I'm just taking a look at some of our viewers are talking in chat, and Anastasia mentions that we should have her come on to talk about a project that she's doing in her community to expand access to fresh fruits and vegetables in low-income communities. So, absolutely, Anastasia, we'll get you worked out with the back room, and we'll have you on either Project Sanity sometime, or maybe if we have Richard back at a later date, we'll bring you on together to be able to talk together about what it's like on the front lines trying to get these things done.
Right.
So,
and this goes to show that it is a factor.
I did notice that actually I was just out driving yesterday, and I noticed that a new community garden had just popped up locally. Right. And so yes, that was somewhat surprising. It was an empty lot that had been empty and kind of just overgrown for a really long time, and I imagine maybe the church near it got involved, right, and now it's a community garden, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, that's what they look at me as the craziest NAACP president in the nation because they find me out there with my members. We are creating community gardens. Okay. Well, we hooked up with the Hilton Garden Inn. They came to me and said, hey, man, we want to put a garden inn on our property because Hilton Garden Inn, can you help us up? So we got a middle school. They came in, worked with the community garden group, put in 3 raised beds, and right now the food, this was a year, this is the second year of it. If you could see this hotel with this beautiful food growing, it's unbelievable what people in the city are seeing when they ride by. Now it's a visual thing for people to see that it's actually happening. And we got some signs made up just talking about the NAACP reinvesting in this community. And the members in the NAACP are being able to benefit from eating there. We also went into public housing and put 8 raised beds in there. And those people are growing their own food now. And what I'm really wanting to do is to create some classes with those ladies in public housing, the older ones, on how you preserve food. Because, see, the younger generation, that's something that they have not seen or know nothing about. But some of those older ladies, we talking that 50 and 60-year-old group, some of them come up out the South and the whole bit, they know all about that canning food. So we want to give them something to do so they can start teaching the younger generation. Because again, in the future, when it comes to trying to save money, growing your food, preserving it, and being able to eat it all winter is a great thing. It got us through it. It could very easily happen again.
That's an excellent point, and that's actually really exciting to hear about being able to. I love anything that helps bridge generation gaps and help people understand the value of their elders, in that there's such value that comes with life experience and just by spanning a large period of time that you pick up so many things, and you can't overstate the value of when somebody's able to screen out the stuff that they shouldn't pass along and be able to pass along the stuff that's really valuable to both them and the community and the people that learn from it. And so I'm really excited to hear about that. And one of the things that comes to my mind is, I know, whenever it, like, helping people through community, or whenever helping people comes up, there's usually some pushback from the right. But I really feel like getting people quality food is something that even they can get behind, in the idea that if the person needs food assistance, then they're probably on health assistance too. Yeah. And it's a lot cheaper to make sure that they have access to food that's not killing them than to treat all the things that are going to happen as a result of them eating the food that's at their gas station or whatever over the period of 10 or 20 years.
Well,
so, if you're looking strictly for cost, it still makes sense to me, but go ahead.
Well, you being a progressive person knows that because it makes sense means that it probably don't fit. Okay, so you know that. I'm in Kansas.
There's less profit in that model for sure.
Yeah, it'd be nice, but I'm in Kansas, and so you have legislators that would go out of their way because of the farmers, and feel that you create a whole bunch of folks growing food in their backyard and stuff that's going to interfere with what farmers are able to sell their food for in the supermarket, so they won't be as excited.
Yeah, I was wondering if, I know Kansas is definitely heavily a farm state, so I'm curious about, so you do see some resistance pushback.
Oh, yes, you're going to have it. Hey, let me tell you what happened, my man. They have farmers, they have off seasons. And so, when you this is your off season where they pay you not to grow anything. They do that with farmers, right? So this one farmer decided, well, when I got my off season, I'm gonna go down and plant some vegetables and sell them in the farmers market. They passed the law. You can't do that. If you use your land during the off season for doing something like that, they won't pay you your supplement.
Oh man.
So I tell you, it sounds like it could be easy, but there's always going to be a wrinkle somewhere,
It's like whenever you're reducing costs, that means you're taking profit from someone.
And I think that's important to understand. That's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing. My reason for justifying it has to do with our disconnected inner city workers. We got a couple of generation of them out there that have several reasons that they're unemployed. Some, they don't have high school education. Others, our school system is producing folks that read on a 7th grade reading level. And the other is the fact they like to get high. And if you can't pass a urine test to get a job, you can't get a job. So we got a growing group of folks out there that we better figure out some way for them to become independent businessmen so they can earn the income, so we can keep them from hitting folks like us who work in the head for a hamburger. So we can figure out a way for them to see that they can create them a business dealing with what we're talking about. And that's something that they can become independent on. And I'm not saying that's going to make them a Donald Trump, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people in communities to start having ways they can start benefiting each other. If the elderly folks that live in a neighborhood know that Johnny down the street's going to be harvesting his garden on Tuesdays, and on Wednesdays he's going to set up a little truck down there selling fresh vegetables, that becomes a weekly function. Every Wednesday I'm going down to see Charlie. That's the kind of mentality we have to kind of get ourselves back around. You mentioned the thing about transportation. We're going to have to figure out ways to create that kind of program that the people who we're talking about will say, hey, man, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, and I like the idea.
We're creating that sustainability that we need.
Yeah, and I like the idea that you talk about how it becomes a weekly event, and I think that helps really build community, because you become accustomed and reliant to a degree on other members of the community. And so it's like if we want fresh strawberries, we got to make sure that he gets his driveway clean so he can get out there and do that, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's the beginning of what we need to do. I know everybody's busy. Politicians are busy. The progressive group is busy. I'm trying, as you know, in my comments, to reach out to the progressive army you all are trying to build, because that army needs to get involved out here with where we are. When you asked a while ago what was the roadblocks, and I said it's the lack of people participating in it. I think that could be an excellent way for that progressive army that y'all building to at least get seen or get their feet on the ground. Where they go from there is fine, but somehow you got to unite yourself with people. And that's a way of doing it. It's not going to take money out of your pocket. All you're doing is some time and some effort. And that's a good way to get started.
Yeah, and it's a good skill set to have just in case Trump does win and we end up in a post-apocalyptic world and we need to survive off the land. But yeah, no, and I just think that it also builds a lot of other skills, is patience and like and learning about, like, when you have to wait 3-6 months for something to go from when you started it to when you finished it. It gives you a sense of accomplishment, and when you consume something that you created with the assistance of nature, it gives you a satisfaction that you don't get from going to the supermarket and buying an apple or whatever it may be.
I got to give you my story since you brought it up. First of all, I didn't realize in public housing, especially the high-rise kind with the elderly, that their day consists of waking up. Once they wake up, other than eating something, the only thing they got left to do is go back to bed. There's really no activity for them all day long. So when we started with this raised bed garden, there really wasn't. There was some communication going on between them, but just friends. Not a lot. But when the garden got built, all of a sudden they had a place to hang. I looked up and the fellows was all out there, man. They was hanging and talking to each other, and then the ladies was out there working in the garden, and it created a sense of community. And they didn't have that at that particular public house before we got started. The people who worked there started noticing how much more people were talking to each other, were getting engaged with each other. And then you just mentioned a thing about the patience of waiting on the food to grow. Well, what happened? You got this thing in our race about people who like those green fried tomatoes. Well, as soon as the tomatoes start growing, they're out there snatching them off the vine because they want to get some green fried tomatoes. And you got the people that's got the patience waiting for them to turn red, wanting to see them red. So you got this standoff going out there, boards, watching the food. So they had to make some signs to tell them, like, leave the food alone until it's ready. This means you. Put these signs up out in there. And it made me think about Booker T. Washington. Because when he went down to Tuskegee, and I associate with his great-grandmother, by the way, when he went down to Tuskegee, and he knew that recently freed slaves, the one thing, regardless if they built the White House or not, the one thing they didn't have was a sense of achievement. That's different when you're working for somebody as their slave and you're doing it for yourself. So he decided that he would make them, build their own dorms. So he made them sleep in tents and sleeping bags, so they built their own dorms. Then they moved into there. Same thing with classroom, same thing with the building of Tuskegee. And he said that when that first class became seniors and they looked out there and saw some of them freshmen coming in wanting to write on the wall, he'd hear them brothers over there yell, "Hey, man, don't write on that wall. That's our wall." Well, that's what I saw happen with that garden, man. That's our garden. Don't be messing with that garden. So that, again, like you said, creates a basic foundation within a community that needs to be there.
And like, I love hearing that, and I think one of the things that may get lost in some progressive circles especially is some of the unique conflicts or issues that arise out of that for members of black communities. So you mentioned that they started hanging out down at the garden.
Yes.
It's dangerous for black people to congregate in general. Like, especially if there's any sort, like if we start raising our voices, getting too excited, it makes people nervous, it makes people scared. So, like, given that it's in the projects, they're probably far enough from white people not to scare anybody. But when you're in more mixed communities or things like that, it becomes a little bit more of a contentious or difficult issue to manage.
Yeah, your age group would feel that way. You understand?
Well, yeah. Fair enough.
We're talking about some little old ladies, man. Little old men in wheelchairs and stuff.
Yeah, it
Uh,
happens. Oh man, you got an excellent point. And so I think one of the values also is beyond I think like you mentioned the conflict resolution. You know
yeah,
that they share the ownership and also just how there's probably a difference between how they treated the garden versus how they treated the project buildings themselves.
yes, very much so. And but you start seeing that pride coming out.
And
Uh,
it can leak into the building
yes,
if
yes.
exactly.
I'm
Go
sure
ahead.
even in the residents meetings, I'm trying to get some pushback between now that we've in the NAACP, we're a recognized entity there, especially through me. So I started having members. We're going to the resident council meetings once a month. And so when it comes time to make a report, we'll stand up and say something, from an NAACP standpoint, because most folks in public housing have become disconnected with the community. Now we're getting them back in the community, even to the point where some of them are wanting to come to the NAACP meetings. So see, that's a way for us to start combining what we're doing along the way. That's the buildup that I'm trying to get us to create. And I just started this process with we have a thing in Kansas City called the Baptist Minister Union, and they meet like once a week. Take off for the summer, but they meet once a week. Well, I'm working with the economic development director at the Chamber of Commerce to be able to funnel job opportunities through the NAACP to them. The NAACP will be the conduit, and we will push these jobs over to the ministers, and they let that president of that union group be the one that takes it to the ministers and say, okay, here's the kind of jobs that's available. Because see, we need them, like I said, when it comes to the environment or it comes to your progressive group, standing up in them pulpits saying something positive about, hey, here's a group that maybe, we worried about how we're going to get our kids' heads on straight, but maybe we need to be directing them to your kind of group. If you don't have chapters of them in Kansas City, you got to hear me talking to you. They can start watching it on the internet, and then eventually, maybe you never know, y'all might expand to a chapter in Kansas City. But we got to start giving people a life where they feel like they belong, and we can do it. And the internet makes that possible.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned before about in a downtown location or the city location that they had the garden in front of the Hilton, and
Yes,
I think we're underestimating as a population the value of instead of just having ornamental plants scattered throughout our cityscapes
right.
as a necessity to keep us from going mad from not seeing any green plant life. uh, Maybe we could actually use function things that could actually, so that if I walk down a certain path on my way to work or whatever every day, is like I know I can maybe find a couple berries or something, and that those things are going to be maintained and kept up and encouraged.
Yeah, somebody went by. Usually they leave it alone, but somebody went by and got my Swiss chard. I mean, they done it twice. Somebody down in that area likes Swiss chard. So, so I told them I wish I knew who it was so I could at least go out there and show them how to cut it so it would continue to grow. They just pulling it out. But but I told them I don't mind that because again, I use this all the time. I just said it a while ago. I'd much rather, because I know the person that got it went home to eat it. They were hungry. Okay? I'd much rather do that than wait for you and I to come walking out of the door to hit us in the head to go buy a daggum hamburger. They going to buy something ain't no good to begin with. At least this person's going home eating some decent food. So I'd much rather that be the factor than anything in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, and I think what I think that's a huge part of what's underlying a lot of issues within our country is that we want to punish people out of bad behavior instead of trying to understand what it is that's
Yes,
driving them to think that that bad behavior is their best option.
that's right. That's right. A man that's hungry is hungry. That's sweet. And when you live around the poor, you actually got people that are hungry, whether you want to accept that fact or not. And it may not be me, it may not be you, but we got people that are hungry. And if there's something that they can go grab them, fruit. I got a guy, an old farmer, that's trying to institute planting fruit trees on the boulevard because he's saying a person can go over there and get him a peach, man. You're hungry, go ahead and grab you a couple of peaches and stuff and eat them standing there on the street instead again, because the opposite of doing that is taking something. Okay. The opposite of doing that is robbing or something that's totally illegal. So this at least gives us a way to be able to feed our population. We got to do it.
Yeah, and with as many, especially the kids, man. It's like a lot of people always want to put everything on personal responsibility, which people have varying opinions on that, but the kids, man, is
Yeah,
like an 8-year-old has no influence over who his parents are, how responsible they are,
that's
how
right.
well they're
That's right.
taking care of getting them fed.
That's
We
right.
need to, like, so I like I know in Olympia we have a lot of community stuff going on, and they're starting to get more younger kids involved, and I think that's really important so that they
That's
develop that sense of accomplishment instead of, oh, I just get free lunch. It's like,
yeah.
no, I go out and I work for my lunch, just
That's
like
the
your
key.
parents are out there working for yours.
That's right. That's key. I went to the first time I ever saw it was in Berkeley, because that's going to be different out there because they way ahead of us as far as their knowledge of life is concerned on these areas, social areas, and they had a class, elementary school class that grew the food, and like once a week they would harvest the food they had been growing, and that food would be used for the meal for the rest of the school that day. And that was a big thing. The kids really wanted that class because you get that ego boosted when people are sitting down eating what you grew. And it talked a lot of head. The kids talked a lot of head about what people were eating. So that's a good way. And this thing at the Hilton, when the food was ready to be harvested, the one thing that happened, the cook came out and he told the kids when they was there one time, he said, I can take a radish and make a mouse out of it. And they said, what? And he picked it up with his little knife and he carved it, made a mouse. And he said, what I do when I have to fix a cheese tray, I'll take the radishes and carve out a mouse and set it on that cheese tray. So the kids were just captivated watching him. And then the hotel let him, with the kids, pick the food they had grown, add it with some stuff he had inside, and they went inside, and the last day there, they all fixed a big meal. I mean, you could just see the expressions on their faces watching what they had actually produced themselves. They had to build the raised bed. So this is more than just from the seeds up. This is from the hammer to the carpentry up to this finished product. And they all set out. I took pictures of them. They was having a ball, man. That's the kind of experience we want them to have. But it was an experience that was totally disassociated with the school. Yes, the school got them over there and stuff, but it was the community that was putting this on, and that extended the people who care about you past just going to the school, and you expect people in school to do it because they getting paid to do it. When they came to us, nobody over there was doing it because that's how they got paid. These people, we were all doing it because that's something we wanted to do to benefit them.
Yeah, and I noticed Anastasia in chat mentioned that part of the problem is that we're very rarely at these tables when these discussions are being had about what to do on the policy level. But back on the community level, I wanted to mention that I think part of what we're seeing is that the loop of life has been broken in the way that we go about our day-to-day activities, and what we see is that manifest in people's anger, rage, confusion, frustrations, those types of things. So when you disconnect people from that pride, that accomplishment, and all of that from like even just something as simple as food, and though we can see it in plenty of other areas, that it manifests itself in attitudes that aren't positive for the community as a result. And so I think rebuilding that loop, that connection between what I do is helping me and my community, and what my community does helps them and me. And I think for the black community, it's pretty obvious how a lot of that got broken, and when there was this other white community that was pushed us out. Go ahead.
That is so important. In the meeting that I just had yesterday with the Economic Development Department, and we were laying out these jobs that could be offered and stuff. I told him we got to have a continuum because a lot of our folks are that disconnected group that not even going to qualify for those jobs. But it made me realize, and I told him I was going to start making a push for millennials, because I need for millennials to understand there's a need for them to get involved in these jobs, these kind of opportunities, so that those disconnected folks can see them. My disconnected folks aren't seeing millennials because millennials are involved where the disconnected folks are. The millennials are involved out there in the workforce, yes, those that are working, but it's not where the disconnected community is. I need for those kids to see you working. You know, I mean, it's important for them to see you, because that way they understand, oh man, it's something I can do. Well, right now they're not. Right now they're just seeing, you know, your regular old folks out there, and they're seeing the older ones, because the older ones been around for a long time, but they're not seeing your age group. They're not seeing that progressive Army folks that y'all are talking about. And that's the people they need to see. They need to see you all talking in the same manner you and I are talking. They hear it from me, but they can accept it from me because that's Richard. That's what he does. You know, that's what he does. He's out here trying to teach us to be environmentalists. So he's going to talk to us like that. But when they start hearing your age group doing it, okay, that's what's going to have the effect on them.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as far as building. We have to be examples in order to. I'm a person that does a lot of things through imitation. Like I learned through imitation,
Yeah.
And so for folks like me, it's really important, like you said, to have somebody that they can look at and be like, well, I can do it like that, and
Right.
I know I'm doing okay. It's
Right.
like I can try and make it better. I might fall short a little bit, but if I'm aiming at that, we accept that as okay.
That's right. That's right. I mean, because when they look out there right now, people missing in the garden, and it's not people like you. They haven't got your age group out there. Look out there from the white age group, though, and they're your age. That's who they see out there. That's who's in the community teaching folks to grow gardens, is that progressive Army age group that y'all got that are white. And they got a bunch of Hispanics in LA and in Texas. But in all those areas, there are very few people, there are very few Black Americans that are out there engaged in it. So our kids aren't really seeing people who look like us doing it.
Yeah, I feel like there's some sort of wicked irony in us getting disconnected from the soil and from the earth in that way.
Yes, sure it is. Sure it is. You know, we're the masters of that stuff.
You know, like, yeah, it's the closest thing to the first things we own. Like,
yeah.
As long as it's still in the dirt, it's not. Once it's out, then it goes somewhere else. But yeah, no, I think it's really I'm really happy to have you on. This was very informative.
I've enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we do want to get back into a little bit more convention coverage as we go out through the day. But I'm definitely want to have you back on Project Sanity at least at some point. And so we'll definitely go ahead.
For your convention coverage, check out the fact that the Democratic Party added an environmental aspect to their platform.
Yeah, if you want to, comment on some of that.
Well, I'm just really getting on top of it, but I got to see a video of the night that they did it. You know, they put together their platform down there in Orlando, and that was a week or so ago. And that it was on a Saturday because I was at a place on a Sunday, and the guy showed the video, and they included the first 100 days. They're going to have some direct effort being put forth toward climate change. So they're going to make the environment, they made the environment one of their platform objectives, along with decriminalizing marijuana. Those two items were the ones that stuck out to me, of course, because of what we do in life or what kind of work we're involved in. And those two items are part of the Democratic platform. Okay, so if in fact they win, those are supposed to be the first 100-day work orders. Okay, now I was on a interview. I heard you say y'all going to interview Jill Stein. I heard something like I did. I interviewed her, mentioned my name to her. She knows me in Kansas City. I spent some time with her. I would ask her why did she feel when she comes up and don't see no people of color in the audience. But that workforce thing, that makes sure. You know, I asked about it and said, well, how can we get an accountability? Because we need to have an accountability. If that's going to be a part of your platform, let's see the steps you're going to take to make it happen. And of course, the person I was talking to said, well, you know how that goes. They use it as a platform, but they don't ever really try to make it. That can be an area that we can really work on together. I'd love to be associated with your Progressive Army and making sure that we give it some attention.
Absolutely, no, it's definitely something that we're interested in, and one of the things, especially at Project Sanity, is we want to make concrete changes that improve the communities that people are living in. Because elections, can make differences, and sometimes they're really important, sometimes not as important. But every day, changing your community in a positive way will make your community better in a positive way. And so, and that's something you can do with just you and a couple neighbors, or just, you know, stepping up and being the first one in your neighborhood to take that next step. And so, before I let you go, if you had anything else that you wanted to cover, you want to mention websites, plugs, or anything like that,
Man,
go ahead and get them out.
I blew it last time because I wasn't prepared for it. I'm not really this time, but you got my name, Richard Mabion. I'm sure people can see that. That's Mabion. And just let's use Facebook. And you know how easy it is to go into Facebook. I'm there. That's a quick way to find me, and then we can go from there. So just look up Richard Mabion. Tell me whatever it is you want to talk about. I'm ready to go with it.
Excellent. That's great to hear, man. And so thank you so much for joining us, and we will definitely make sure to have you on in the near future.
Thank you.
Again, I'll be reaching out to you in the near future.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.